Today our lesson is Joshua chapters 21 and 22. I've titled this 48 Cities for the Levites and the Problem of Altar Ed. They named it Ed. Some of you have that in your translations. Others will simply say the translation Ed means witness. Verse 1. Then the heads of households of the Levites approached Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of households of the tribes of the sons of Israel. They spoke to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, saying, The Lord commanded through Moses to give us cities to live in, with their pasture lands for our cattle. So the sons of Israel gave the Levites from their inheritance these cities with their pasture lands, according to the command of the Lord. Now, here's some background and information and clarification to get us started with this chapter. The 12 tribes of Israel, as you can see on the slide, they already now had been assigned their territories, at least in part. So now it's Levi's turn. But they weren't promised a separate territory for themselves. Now, going back to Exodus, we see that the Levites were set up into four groups. The priests, the sons of Aaron, what they're also known as, they were the actual priests who would serve in the tabernacle and later temple. And that was on the east side of the tabernacle during the Exodus. The Kohathites, that's from Kohath's other sons, they carried the sacred vessels, and they're on the south side. The Gershonites, another one, they carried the curtain and fabrics of the tent and the tabernacle on, and then they camped on the west side. The Merarites, they carried the bars and the boards which supported everything, and they camped on the north side. So what's going on here? Levi had a son named Kohath, who had a son named Amram, and then that Amram had the two sons, Aaron and Moses, and also their sister Miriam. You can see that in Exodus 6. Now, Levi also had two other sons, Gershom and Merari. So you can see this building. The members of the four subdivisions of Levi, were used, as we'll see, to kind of unite and connect together the other tribes in units of three, so that the tribes wouldn't forget that they were parts of the nation Israel. Otherwise, they might get the idea that they could be separate nations. Verse 4, Then the lot came out for the families of the Kohathites, and the sons of Aaron the priest, who were of the Levites, received 13 cities by lot from the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of the Simeonites, and from the tribe of Benjamin. The rest of the sons of Kohath received 10 cities by lot from the families of the tribe of Ephraim, and from the tribe of Dan, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh. Okay, let's look at this in a little bit more detail again. The families of the Kohathites, one of the sons of Levi, were divided into two sections. The sons of Aaron the priest got 13 cities in Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. The Kohathites received 10 cities within the territories of Ephraim, Dan, and the western half of Manasseh. And they were the descendants of Kohath's other sons, who were named Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel, which you can go back and look in Exodus 6. Okay, what you see here is a diagram of the tabernacle during the Exodus, along with where the various tribes camped around it. And so this is just show us quickly to get an idea. What the top of the slide is north, and to the right is east. And you see Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun there, and you can look at the other ones. This shows a general arrangement, and it has to do with the organization that we have here. This slide shows us the general idea of where these 48 cities were. And as you can see, they were fairly well scattered across this area of Israel at this time. Verse 6, the sons of Gershon received 13 cities by lot from the families of the tribe of Issachar, and from the tribe of Asher, and from the tribe of Naphtali, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan. The sons of Merari, according to their families, received 12 cities from the tribe of Reuben, from the tribe of Gad, and from the tribe of Zebulun. Now the sons of Israel gave by lot to the Levites these cities with their pasture lands, as the Lord had commanded through Moses. They gave these cities, which are here mentioned by name, from the tribe of the sons of Judah and from the tribe of the sons of Simeon, and they were for the sons of Aaron, one of the families of the Kohathites of the sons of Levi, for the lot was theirs first. So we see the Gershonites and the Merarites here getting some cities. 13 went to, you can see, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and part of Manasseh. The Merarites got 12 cities in the territories of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. Okay, with verse 11 through 19, I'm going to hold off reading and go straight to the explanation. It's just a bunch of names and places. But details concerning Hebron are explained here because Hebron's already been assigned to somebody. The Levites, they got Hebron plus these other villages with their acreage around it. And you can see a bunch of names here that we probably none of us know about. Ain actually was in the territory of Simeon, but eventually over time Simeon got just absorbed into the tribe of Judah and it lost its identity. And this area outside of Hebron and its associated villages belonged to Caleb and his descendants. And the Levites also received the cities and surrounding acreage of Gibeon, Bega, Anathoth, Almon within the tribe of Benjamin. So they're getting some out of Benjamin here. Eventually, all 13 of these cities and their villages ended up in Judah once Benjamin and Simeon got swallowed up within Judah. Now, Caleb's descendants also lived in Hebron. The fact that the Levites were assigned the city doesn't mean everybody had to leave. It just meant that was their city, but the Levites and Caleb and his descendants, and eventually others who wanted to live down there for whatever reason, could join in as well. Verses 20 to 26 also have identified quite a number of other cities. And so let's look at the details. I won't read that. You can read it, of course, on your own. As the family of Kohath was most honored amongst the Levites, they received cities in Ephraim, which was next in honor after Judah. Dan and Manasseh were also honored by having cities of the Kohathites. Now, that goes back in part with Ephraim and Manasseh with Jacob's blessing when Joseph brought him, as we covered in previous lessons. We also see here Shechem mentioned. It was already, we had last week, it referred to as a city of refuge. It's included here as a city of the Levites. And it's interesting, this is very near, in fact, within a half mile, of where Jacob and his family stayed once they had crossed over the Jordan going westward after meeting Esau. Also, it's where Levi and Simeon committed mass murder of these Canaanites there because of the rape of their sister Dinah, which you can read about that in Genesis 34. Verses 27 to 33 deal with the cities that the Gershonites received. And so I'm not going to read those. It's just these names, many of which we don't know where they are anymore, although we know a few. Now, the 13 Gershonite cities included two cities in Manasseh and in Naphtali. That was Golan. We know the modern Golan Heights, gives you an idea where Golan was, and Kadesh. And they were in 3 tribes on the west. You can see Issachar, Asher, and Naphtali. And also they had cities on the east side, which was Manasseh, but that's eastern Manasseh. And this also helped to bind the tribes of Israel together by having some of them, of the Gershonites, on one side of Jordan, some on the other. That acted to kind of act as I think of it as a jigsaw puzzle, linking them together in various ways. We've already seen this earlier when there was some cross-fertilization, so to speak, of one tribe having some cities in a neighboring tribe and back and forth. It's further linked them together. The danger here, again, is that left to themselves with none of these links, they may have in time decided they were going to be separate nations, not just 12 tribes of one nation. In verses 34 to 40, we see the cities that were delegated to the tribe, or the families rather, of Merari. Okay, so they have a variety. I'm not reading this again, but let's look at it, some of the details. The 12 Merarite cities, including the refuge city of Ramoth and Gad, okay, that was on the east side. The Merarite cities were in 2 tribes on the east side of Jordan and in 1 on the west side. So again, we see what to me is like pieces of a jigsaw that hold everything together, this cross-fertilization by putting Gershonites, just like they did also here with the Merarites, scattering them back and forth across the Jordan to just help to unite this new developing nation together. Now, it mentions Mahanaim. I'll just talk about that one place, that one city. It means 2 camps. You find it in Genesis 32, the beginning, where you first see it. And that's where Jacob met a host of angels prior to his wrestling match with God. And it's also near, actually, was a city, and it was surrounding forest, where Absalom died during his attempt to overthrow David. Okay, verses 41 through 45 give us a summary. Let's read. All the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the sons of Israel were 48 cities with their pasture lands. These cities each had its surrounding pasture lands. Thus it was with all these cities. So the Lord gave Israel all the land which he had sworn to give to their fathers, and they possessed it and lived in it. And the Lord gave them rest on every side, according to all that he had sworn to their fathers, and no one of all their enemies stood before them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hand. Not one of the good promises which the Lord had made to the house of Israel failed. All came to pass. Now, altogether, there were 48 Levite cities scattered across these sons, and 6 of those cities were cities of refuge. Now, look at verse 43. The Lord gave the Israelites all of the land. Well, they didn't get all of the land that had been promised. So what was going on here? Is that a mistake? No. They got all they could handle at that time. Remember, back during the Exodus, the Lord had told Moses that they're going to have to move in gradually. There's not enough of them to be able to take care of all of that land they had. And it wasn't just because they were small and a large number of people. It was also because if they were so low in numbers that they would be even danger from the wild animals at the time. They did have lions and bears and perhaps leopards, for example, in that land in quite high numbers at that time, very early on. So, but their greatest extension of land didn't come until around the time of David and Solomon. But even then, they never got more than it's estimated maybe 1/10 of all that had been promised to Abraham. Now, one other little detail: the pasture lands of the Levites. Now, as we read in Numbers and in Deuteronomy, the other tribes, the 12 tribes, were supposed to take care of the Levites because they didn't get tribal lands of their own. They were embedded in all of these 12 tribes. And so with that, why are they also getting these surrounding pasture lands? Now that was 1,000 cubits circumference around. You can draw a line of 1,000 cubits out from each city, each little suburb area, and that gives them a decent amount of land, a lot of acreage. But then 1,000 cubits would be 1,800 feet, perhaps 2,000 feet out, you can see, so not quite half a mile around. So why were they granted pasture land if the other 12 tribes were going to take care of them? Well, first of all, as you read through in Judges and going forward, you can see that the 12 tribes didn't always follow through what they were supposed to be doing here. they began to slack off, and so the Levites were supposed to get the food, take part of the sacrifices made, which would provide them with food. Now that would give them some, but also the Levites, presumably they're going to be expanding in population, and they wouldn't just be in these small towns, which, I mean, some of these cities were very, very small little hamlets as we would think of them today. And so they needed some room in which to expand where they could have their homes and such. And so after a while, they not only weren't getting enough sacrifices slacked off, but that they had to feed themselves. So they had to go out and raise cattle and do it themselves because the promises to them weren't being kept. Also, I have a question here in red. Why didn't the Levites and the Israelites, all of them, gain all that God had promised them? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. First, it was unbelief. They didn't trust the Lord to continue. After Moses and Joshua were gone, they thought, well, we're not them. How do we do this? And they looked at the enemy and thought, oh, they're too big. And they went back to being afraid, and they started accommodating and compromising. So basically, they didn't believe that God would continue to take care of them. Now, another thing was simple rebellion. They were told to have only God before them, no other gods. And what did they do? They started very, very quickly. In fact, they had been doing it during the time of the Exodus even. They began to follow other gods. And so it was two things, rebellion and unbelief. Now, that can be said to be true for us in a way. Now, when we have unconfessed sin in our lives, this blocks God from being able to bless us as he wants to do. We need to confess our sins, as 1 John 1:9 says, and then he will cleanse and forgive us our sins. Oftentimes we suffer in our Christian walk because we have some sins that we don't want to address. We try to pretend they're not there, like David with Bathsheba, but the Lord knows. And until we wrestle with it and deal with it and confess it, the Lord is blocked. And whose fault's that? It's not his, it's ours. Now, chapter 22, let's start reading. Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh and said to them, you have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have listened to my voice and all that I commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days to this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brothers as he spoke to them. Therefore turn now and go to your tents, to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and walk in all his ways and keep his commandments and hold fast to him and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now, as we see here, the eastern 2.5 tribes had kept their promise to help the others, the other 9.5, to conquer the land on the west side of Jordan. And they had done it just as they had said they would do. They held up to their end. So Joshua blesses them, and he sends them out on their way home. But he also gives them a warning. Obey the commandment and law. And let's look at these. To love the Lord their God, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, to serve him with all their heart and soul. Now, these commandments are good for us also. We have Christ's new commandments in the New Testament, replacing some of this. Some of the Old Testament commandments were specific to the nation Israel, such as the sacrifices in the temple and the structure of that, the Mosaic laws governing care for the land, the Jubilee, and so forth. Those we're not under now, but these still fit for us. But by the way, with those Old Testament laws, the 10 commandments apply to everybody, not just unbelievers, not just to the Israelites. It applies to everybody on the planet, both back then and now. Verse 7. Now to the 1/2 tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half Joshua gave a possession among their brothers westward beyond the Jordan. So when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them, and said to them, Return to your tents with great riches, and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, iron, and with very many clothes. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the 1/2 tribe of Manasseh returned home and departed from the sons of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they had possessed, according to the command of the Lord through Moses. Now, we see here they're not just returning, but they're going back with their share of the spoils gained during the conquest of the land. So they get to have their amount. They're going back with lots of loot, which will help them get a good start in the new territory they have. Now, some have said the three tribes were wrong for choosing to stay on the east side of Jordan. Let's explore that. God had promised to Abraham, that his descendants to Isaac, that they would inherit a huge amount of land reaching down eastward as far as Euphrates River. They never got that far, so to this date. Now, under the command of Moses, they had conquered Og, king of Sihon, and then that other areas of that land, left it open for the taking. All right, that's nice. However, was that God's will for them? The command to cross over Jordan was quite clear. Now, we don't read that Moses asked the Lord about the matter, but in verse 9, we see that the Lord had told Moses to do this, to allow them to do that. So really what we have is a problem of their rationale for getting the land. They wanted the land for personal gain. They saw it as being very rich land. It would be great farmland. They could have huge numbers of flocks of, cattle, goats, sheep, whatever else they wanted to raise that met Mosaic law. But their attitude towards it was they wanted to help themselves. It didn't show that they had sought the Lord's guidance. They could have gone to Moses. We were thinking that we could have the land on the east side, but Moses, would you check with the Lord to see if that's okay? We don't see that. They said, we want that, and Moses, it's not said, but Moses apparently brought that before the Lord, and the Lord indicated, yes, go ahead, let them have it. However, it was going to cause problems as we go forward in history with Israel. And also, I want to point out now that the eastern tribes, as we go forward in the verses, were concerned that the 9.5 tribes on the west might not continue to consider them as being part of Israel, because they are now on this other side. So they wanted to build an altar as a sign that they still followed Yahweh. Okay, let's take a moment here to look at this area where it probably was generally. In Joshua 3:16 says, the waters which were flowing down from above stood and rose up in one heap a great distance away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. Now, what we're looking at here at that peak mountain, that is known as Sartaba, but that was Zarethan. Okay, and this is where the waters of the Jordan piled up to allow the Israelites to cross over into Jordan. If you were standing here where this picture is facing in this direction, if you had turned completely around, you would be looking at the ruins of the Adam Bridge. Verse 13, then the sons of Israel sent to the sons of Reuben, to the sons of Gad, and to the 1/2 tribe of Manasseh into the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one chief for each father's household from each of the tribes of Israel, and each one of them was the head of his father's household among the thousands of Israel. They came to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad, to the 1/2 tribe of Manasseh, to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what is this unfaithful act which you have committed against the God of Israel, turning away from following the Lord this day, by building yourselves an altar to rebel against the Lord this day? Is not the iniquity of Peor enough for us, from which we have not cleansed ourselves to this day, although a plague came on the congregation of the Lord? that you must turn away this day from following the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel tomorrow. Wow. The leaders of the western tribes, under the leadership of Phinehas, met with the leaders of the eastern tribes to demand an explanation of why this altar had been built. And again, they just said, why did you do this? You're wrong. They didn't even ask. They didn't stop and ask, well, why did you do this? And let them explain. They just launched right in. They assumed the altar was built for sacrifices. But, the law said that there would be only one altar for all of that. That's in Deuteronomy 12. So that was a big problem, if it was true. That would mean that they had turned away from serving the Lord to serve other gods. Really, really bad. God's going to judge that if that's what they're doing. And Phinehas used the example of the rebellion at Peor as a reason why that was such a dangerous thing to do, since he was the one involved in it. The people were going to other gods. They had started mixing with people, the Canaanite people around them. And so there was a man and a Midianite woman that got together and before all Israel in the tent, and he took a javelin and jammed it through both of them. If you read that gory story, it's in Numbers 25, in order to stop the plague, which had already 24,000 Israelites had died from doing this. And so he stopped that. That's why in particular Phinehas would have brought that up. If, however, the land of your possession is unclean, then cross into the land of the possession of the Lord, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord or rebel against us by building an altar for yourselves, besides the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan, the son of Zerah, act unfaithfully in the things under the ban, and wrath fall on all the congregation of Israel? And that man did not perish alone in his iniquity. The question about the possibility of the east side of Jordan being unclean, being asked by Phinehas, particularly priest, suggests that there is a division starting to blossom here very early, that the Westerners were suspicious of the Easterners, and that the three tribes on the east side knew about that, and they were afraid of being cast out of Israel. So Phinehas the priest, he's the one that suggested this idea that, well, if you're unclean, well, you can, come over to the other side for your sacrifices and don't do all this, and you can come and actually move back and join within us, and we'll take you, and you can just leave the east side completely empty and do that. So he's suggesting that, which is kind of in their face. The eastern tribes knew that God had promised special blessing on those who had crossed over Jordan, and they chose to stay on the other side. And it was for economic reasons. They saw they could live real nice and wealthy and healthy over there. And so they didn't do it for spiritual reasons. They did it for personal gain. Now, Phinehas, we see here using the example of Achan, which is back at the first of Joshua. We know when they had finished after Jericho. And that the idea was that Achan himself didn't just get punished for it, but his whole family was judged for what he had done. And therefore, based on that kind of a pattern that God was using, that meant if they're creating a sacrificial altar on the east side, then all Israel is going to get judged for it. So we got to do something about it. And Phinehas is just calling a building of that altar as an act of rebellion. Verse 21. Then the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh answered and spoke to the heads of the families of Israel. The mighty one, God, the Lord. The mighty one, God, the Lord. He knows, and may Israel itself know, if it was in rebellion or if in an unfaithful act against the Lord, do not save us this day. If we have built us an altar to turn away from following the Lord, or if to offer a burnt offering or a grain offering on it, or to offer sacrifices of peace offerings on it, may the Lord himself require it. But truly we have done this out of concern, for a reason, saying, in time to come your sons may say to our sons, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between us and you, you sons of Reuben and sons of Gad. You have no portion in the Lord. so your sons may make our sons stop fearing the Lord. So here we see the response. They were doing this to try to make sure that they were still counted and recognized as part of Israel. They had already begun to worry about this. Who knows what conversations had been going on as they were with Joshua taking over the land, and occasionally say, well, why are you guys all wanting so bad to be on the east side? Why don't you stay over here with us? I can just imagine conversations have been going for some years about this. And then when they actually moved back over, it brought it all to a head. And I noticed their response here was to use 3 different names of God to show that they still follow him and have no intention of serving other gods. They use Elohim, the highest God among all gods, and they also use Yahweh. Jehovah is the highest God. And they also point out that this altar was not to be used for sacrifices of any kind. And then they reveal their fear that in time, other tribes may kick them out of Israel and say, you don't have anything to do with us anymore. You're over there. And since they had the altar, no, you can't come over here and sacrifice on the altar because you don't belong with us anymore. Verse 26, therefore we said, let us build an altar, not for burnt offering or for sacrifice. Rather, it should be a witness between us and you, and between our generations after us, that we are to perform the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings and our sacrifices and with our peace offerings, so that your sons will not say to our sons in time to come, you have no portion in the Lord. Therefore we said, it shall also come about, if they say this to us or to our generations in time to come, then we shall say, see the copy of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, not for burnt offering or for sacrifice. Rather, it is a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away from following the Lord this day by building an altar for burnt offering, for grain offering, or sacrifice, besides the altar of the Lord our God, which is before his tabernacle. Okay, we see here that the altar was built to serve as a monument of remembrance or a witness to their loyalty to the Lord of Israel. But a couple of questions arise. If that was the case, why didn't they ask the other tribes about it at first? That could have cleared up a lot. And even more to the point, why didn't they ask the Lord about it? No evidence they did. Verse 30. So when Phinehas, the priest, and the leaders of the congregation, even the heads of the families of Israel who were with him, heard the words which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the sons of Manasseh spoke, it pleased them. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, said to the sons of Reuben and to the sons of Gad and to the sons of Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you have not committed this unfaithful act against the Lord. Now you have delivered the sons of Israel from the hand of the Lord. Then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and the leaders returned from the sons of Reuben and from the sons of Gad, from the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan to the sons of Israel, and brought back word to them. The word pleased the sons of Israel, and the sons of Israel blessed God. And they did not speak of going up against them in war to destroy the land in which the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad were living. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad called the altar witness, or Ed. For, they said, it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. So Phinehas, he's the spokesman for all the 9.5 tribes. He accepts the explanation, he returns with the explanation, shares it with the people on the west side, and everybody seems happy. But there's something to notice here. We see a distinction between sons of Israel and sons of Reuben, etc. Those in the promised land see themselves as being more faithful, more spiritual, and true sons of Israel than those on the east side. I also notice here that there was some politics going on. They mention Reuben and Gad, but they don't talk about the sons of Manasseh, because Manasseh was on both sides. And so that was a ticklish situation. If they decided to go in and wipe out Manasseh on the east side, what would the ones on the west side? That's their family. What would they think? They might get rebellion and then a civil war going on the west side. So it was a pretty dicey situation here, and you can see some politics being played out. Let's look at some application. What does this mean for our lives? Now, out of chapter 21, okay, we see the Levites were scattered amongst the other 12 tribes so they could minister to them. So they would have representatives of the Lord everywhere in the country. And it also helped meld the Israelites together as a single nation. Otherwise, they would have had a temptation to split into separate countries, and that would have been a really bad thing. We also see from history that the Israelites, they never gained all the land that God promised them because of unbelief and rebellion. And that application to us, I think, is pretty clear. Unconfessed sin in our lives blocks God from blessing us as he wants to do. And we see 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and righteous or just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. A great promise to us. From chapter 22, okay, just like Lot with Abraham, these 2.5 tribes walked by sight instead of by faith. Lot chose the rich land near Sodom and Gomorrah because it was really rich and good land, and he let Abraham have the land not so good. That was very nice of him. And the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh chose the rich land of Bashan, again, for, it seems, economic reasons. And it's a warning to us to seek God's will in faith and not just operate according to what looks good to us. The 9.5 tribes chose to live in the promised land west of the Jordan. The other 2.5 chose to live on the east side. With these choices, a division we see it starts to grow in Israel. And it finally led to their being scattered all over the world. We know that the actions of Assyria taking away the northern kingdom, and later by Rome taking away Judah completely, even more so than Babylon did. Throughout all this strife, the basic problem always and up to now was unbelief and disobedience to the Lord. And what does it mean for us? Okay, we face this danger today when we begin to be prideful that our church, individually or denomination, is better than the others. We look at ourselves as more spiritual. We're closer to God. We're better than you are. That can lead to separation over minor differences, which really are not doctrinal and has happened many, many times. And that can cause the differences to become just blossom into major ones, and the end result is the Christians, believers, being split away from each other. And in all of this, of course, Satan and his demons are just laughing. We need to learn to focus on the Lord. When we have questions, take them to him and always seek the Lord. Israel didn't do that. They did it once haphazardly from time to time, but they weren't consistent, and that led to their ruin. We see from Revelation that eventually churches will fall apart to where things are really bad before the Lord returns.